Hi, detectives. This is Melissa the Spy coming on to give a little content warning for this particular episode. There is the death of two children in this preteen teen age. And if that is going to be something that prevents you from enjoying this episode, recommend that you skip this one. Thank you.
I now call this meeting of the Amateur Detective Club to order. My name is Tristan Miller, the Saucy Sleuth.
I'm Melissa Meli, the Spy.
I'm Tyler Riley, Captain ACAB.
Because you're a captain. I see. I get it. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah, I'm chasing that white whale.
Hey, I don't see color.
I know, we really gotta get you to the optometrist. I mean, it's an issue. It's why you can't fly a plane.
No, just wait until March at the very least.
Fair enough. Did you like my robot voice?
Oh, March, because after Black History Month.
Yeah.
I saw you like looking off, and I was like, she's trying to put it together, isn't she?
I was talking with someone about when it is acceptable to stop saying Happy New Year, or what's the latest you can say Happy New Year. And someone
the
said
end of that
February.
first week.
Oh, interesting. And someone had suggested into February, and I'm like, that's racist. Because if you're saying Happy New Year instead of Happy Black History Month, you're a racist.
There is that, yes.
Not even.
I think
And also-
like it's February 18th. Like, I mean, January 18th. Like, don't bother me with Happy New Year. Like, we're 2 weeks into the year. Like, back off.
Mhm. It's true.
Personally.
Yes. I think I'm okay with it through. I guess today is the 15th, so yeah, I think today is the cutoff.
Interesting.
I don't know.
I think Happy New Year is acceptable kind of until February 1st, if you have not seen the person since the new year. If you're doing or haven't corresponded, because I've been sending a lot of emails lately, not to brag, but I've been sending a lot of emails lately, and I've been starting them with Happy New Year because I've not talked to this person since the prior year. And then after that, I don't care.
Yeah. I responded to a couple of emails, I think 2 days ago with Happy New Year, which is why I feel like today is fine.
Yeah.
I
Just
don't
through
think I
today.
have ever typed that in an email.
Wow.
How do you open your emails?
Hello.
There you go. Just no matter what time of year it is.
Yep.
Hello.
Hello, comma.
Great.
A
I love
comma.
Or
Okay.
per my last email.
per my last email. I
when
think
you're
Hello again.
spicy.
Yeah.
Hello again.
hello again. Just checking in. I feel like Melissa, you and I are big exclamation point users in all forms of communication, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, I read through my email and then I go and like remove a couple of exclamation points. It's like when you put on some jewelry, you put on some accessories and then the advice is to
Mhm.
remove an accessory to simplify it. That is how I treat my exclamation points as well.
That was
Mhm.
Coco Chanel? Was that who
I
that
think so.
was from?
Probably someone like that.
I believe it's Cacao Chanel.
Oh,
Sure.
apologies to the House of Chanel.
Chanel.
Yeah. We're
Right.
gonna do an
what are we?
episode.
Yeah, so Poirot. He's back.
Yeah. Yes. We're not just gonna chat. We're gonna chat. We're gonna go on tangents, but around an episode.
It's
Yes,
like a
that's
party
true.
up in here.
Oh my gosh.
What kind of party is it?
A Halloween party.
The inexplicable apostrophe.
Yes.
I wanted to also say to anyone who's listening to this, thank you. And also, more importantly, most of the Poirot episodes that are like TV movies like this one, that are like an hour and a half, they're on Letterboxd. So if you have a Letterboxd account, you can log that you and review them if you're so interested. I have
Oh,
started doing that now.
I was
What
thinking
did
about
you?
like the vending machines outside of like a supermarket
Now,
where you
what are
get
you
like
talking
the
about?
DVDs, but I think that's a red
Oh,
Oh,
box.
That's a
Red
red
Box.
Yeah,
box. Yeah.
Yes.
so that's on me.
Okay. No, all good. Letterboxd, if you're not familiar, is a social media site surrounding cinema. It's really
I
quite fun.
I hate it, kind of, a lot.
Okay. Oh boy, are we gonna have to fight? What's up? Why do you hate
Probably.
it?
Like I just noticed that people like in certain situations, like before a movie's released, will just bomb it with like half star or
Oh,
1 star reviews.
sure. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
like
yeah.
I think like you shouldn't be able to do that unless a movie's released.
I think that's, I can agree with that critique. I feel like that's most review websites at the moment, but I'll bring that up to them in the next meeting.
Dear Mr. Letterboxd,
Yes. Per my last email.
I am a white human in the United States.
Yes.
Um, but
Oh
yeah,
goodness.
so we're watching Agatha Christie's Poirot. We watched Agatha Christie's Poirot, Halloween Party, right?
Yes.
Yes.
What is that apostrophe doing?
Um so it's because Hallows even it was isn't it like isn't Ian even
I
evening?
hallows even.
How
I
like
can't Hallow
evening?
even. Uh,
I'm making things up is what I'm doing.
Okay,
I
I'm gonna
was
have a
totally
quick,
with you though. I was believing
yeah.
everything you said.
It might be after evening, or I might be making that up. It's possible, either one.
Like it felt like a weird Shakespeare apostrophe, so I just deferred to you.
All Hallows Eve. It's kind of how it. So I believe the
Oh,
Hallows are like the spirits, and we're really losing something by the fact that this is an audio medium because I'm gesticulating and I'm sure it's very silly. Uh,
Well, we're
so
recording.
you know
We
yeah,
can
what's
clip this for the TikTok before it gets banned.
yeah, yeah. Maybe we should.
can can I tell you, Melissa?
Hmm.
You are 100% correct.
I
It's
love
an
it.
abbreviation of Eve, and the apostrophe would indicate a V or W.
Hey,
That's crazy. Way to go.
thank
Lazy.
you.
It's not a cupcake.
Yeah. Crazy
I
cupcakes.
I was I was like half and half about whether or
Yeah.
not that was a fact I remembered or something that I just made up. So,
Well
hey,
done. Either way,
thanks. Thank you.
you were 100% correct, which is
So,
delightful.
how confusing is that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Oh.
Oh.
But yeah, so I guess they use the apostrophe in Britain more often, and I think it's probably a more common usage when it's a little bit older of
That's true.
a
Yeah.
property.
That's
Um,
fair.
yeah.
Hmm.
Speaking of old properties, though, we are attending a party that is going to be thrown by Rowena Drake at her home, Apple Trees. Yes, that is the name of the estate from my recollection.
Is it really? I didn't catch that. That's very funny. It's my last name.
I was gonna say, doesn't your last name Appletree?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
did I did
Honeybee
maybe I
Appletree,
just
right?
forgot that, but I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, my name basically means honeybee apple trees.
And we are greeted by our old friend early on in the episode, Ariadne Oliver, played
Ugh,
by Zoe Wanamaker, one of my
yes.
Kick my
faves.
teeth in. Ugh.
She's
I, I,
she she's sick for
she's
most of this episode. Spoiler alert,
she's
and
sick for this. Yeah.
she looks amazing
Yes.
the entire
That's got.
time.
She
She
has
is
like
sneezing all over and sniffling all over the place. Looks great.
there's that like what is it? I think it's You Got Mail where Meg Ryan gets really sick and she's like all stuffy and pathetic. It's got that
Yeah.
vibe to it where it's like, there's something kind of cute about someone being sick.
Yes. And that
On a
is what we
screen,
should.
yes.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah. Because you don't smell through a screen.
Yeah.
I was about to say, and that is what we should all strive for. Someone who thinks we're cute when we're sick. Okay.
I like we can strive for that. We can do that.
Yes. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's definitely something you should strive for as someone who gets ill a lot.
Yeah. There you
Certainly it
go.
would help.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah, because insurance and then money. I've watched too many Poirots.
Oh,
yes.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Insurance money. My gosh. Um, so yeah,
Oh,
Ariadne seems to be coming down with something at this party. There are so
down with
many
the sickness.
children. There are so many
Oh,
children and
wow.
jack-o'-lanterns.
There are. Down with Sickness by Disturbed. I swear to
Oh,
God, I will focus by the end of the episode because I will have run out of energy. It is. I'm having a good time.
Oh boy. But yes, I caught the Down with the Sickness reference.
Thank
okay.
you.
At this party, Ariadne Oliver's outfit is like this this gauzy open front wrap kind of deal. Gosh, what is that called? I wear them too. But it's like very like stars and moons, very celestial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I
Mm-hmm.
want it for my closet. It's great. So Mrs. Rowena Drake, the host of this party,
So,
has
can you say her name again?
Rowena Drake.
Okay. For whatever reason, every time I hear it, I think it's Wawina, and I'm like,
Rowena.
Wa Warina, which is not correct.
A wed woes for Wowena.
Exactly. See, Tyler
Yes.
gets it.
She has two awful adult children milling about. That's all.
I would say she has. No, I think she just has two adult children. I don't think they're awful, actually. I think both of them are fine.
Oh my God, I hate them
Ooh, I
so
love this
much.
fight.
I think they're the worst.
I think you're just homophobic, Melissa. I think that's what it is.
Wait, what? How? Are
What
the
do you
sisters
mean?
incestuous? What are you
No,
implying?
they're both just so clearly queer coded.
Yeah?
Yeah, the
I think he is, but I don't feel like she is.
Wait, who
oh well.
he?
Hooey.
Rowena
It's a bunch
Rowena
of
Drake's
hooey.
the two adult children of Rowena Drake.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Not the
he's
actual
definitely
queer people
Yes.
in this
no 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 no
in
no no
this
no no
movie.
no no. That will appear later on.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, no, I think it's this. Maybe I'm willing to put up, and this is a problem of mine. This is a problem I have. This is
Mhm.
my
Okay.
issue that I am my cross to bear. I am willing to put up with a bad attitude if the person is either funny, as the guy is, or like has another bad attitude and is a woman. I'm both willing to put up with both of those personality types if I find them personally amusing.
That that tracks.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he kind of reminds me of an ex-boyfriend of mine, which might be kind of coding my reaction to him. I don't hate that
Mm.
ex, but I think it's their dynamic that I find annoying
Oh,
more than anything else.
yeah, they're awful to each other. At one point, she tells him to shut up in a way that I'm like, how are you? You're adults.
All right, yes. So we are sitting around. It is raining, pouring down,
Killing and
thunder,
snoring.
lightning, and there's a ton of children sitting around this Halloween party. And there is this girl named Joyce. She is a preteen. She is 13 years old, we find out later. And Joyce, everyone just constantly puts her down. This poor girl. She's such an
Yeah.
awkward kid.
Sorry.
What?
Boy, did they put her down.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They really just she can't do anything right. She's trying to get attention. And she says that she saw a murder once, and everyone is like, okay, whatever, Joyce. We know how you lie. And
Yeah.
she's, yeah.
It's giving, unfortunately, Shut Up Meg from Family Guy. You know what I mean?
Oh,
It's
Very
just
much
like
so.
everyone's like, "You dumb whore," and everyone's like, "Hey, what? Ah," you know. But it is like just that level of vitriol, and kids can just be so cruel like that. Eh?
yeah. And the adults are not good to her either. They're,
No.
No,
Yeah.
they
it's
also
just
suck.
later on, Ariadne Oliver talks about her, and she does say, like, it's just such an exhausting age. I shouldn't be unkind about it. And this is when Poirot has appeared. And Poirot's like, no, it's okay. It really is an exhausting age.
Truly, like
Fair.
there is just certain ages that like, oh my gosh, like
50.
sometimes you can kind of remember and give like a pass, but like, boy, can children be annoying.
Yeah, and my mother,
Well,
when I
so
got
can
into high
adults.
school, true. When I got into high school, my mom was like, "Ugh, middle school kids are just so difficult." And it like I just kind of can't deal with that age group. And I'm like, "But what about me when I was in middle school?" And she's like, "Well, you weren't as bad, but you weren't the best either." I'm like, "All right, fair enough." So, middle
Yeah, man.
school, heck of a time.
Truly.
But
So many
but
things going
yes.
on with your bodies and then where you are mentally. It's just a terrible time for everybody.
It really is. And if you were a weird kid, you probably got bullied in middle school. I certainly did. So, yes, no one believes that Joyce saw a murder once. She's really hammering hard for it. Um, she says it wasn't till later she realized it was a murder, so she didn't tell the cops about it. So that's interesting.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, like, what the heck does that mean?
What could
Um,
that possibly mean?
yeah,
And I mean this with respect to the actor portraying Joyce. And
great.
I think she does a really fine job of having like this needy, obnoxious energy, right? I think she really nails that.
Yeah.
And she's in this bee costume.
Yes.
And the way she's styled, unfortunately, everything about her reminded me of James Corden, where I was like, I don't want to hear this person talk. I don't want to think about this person. I kind of wish this person was dead. And luckily for
Oh
me,
gosh.
the problem took care of itself.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Unbelievable.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
just before the murder, which we're getting to, a woman who is dressed as a witch with the full, green face paint, like the Wicked Witch of the West, comes in, and her name is Mrs. Goodbody. Um,
And boy,
and
does
it
she.
becomes,
I'm on one tonight. I know what to tell you.
and she is, yeah, wasn't invited. Nobody likes her. Blah blah blah.
And she's doing like a
Um,
bit as a witch to do tea leaves for the children. And they're like, "You are such an embarrassment to society. Please leave my home."
Like truly.
Yeah,
Oh, like it's
really.
wild. Like
I love her.
it's wild to like stay and like to have a mind like that or to have like no cares in the world in that way. I
Gosh,
bow down, Queen.
yep. Goals. True
Just rocking
goals.
up, you mean? Just like, hey, I hear a party's happening. Why don't I
Yeah,
show up
wreck it
as a
up. Why
witch?
not?
Yes.
I
Yeah,
like that
just
workaround
being
for cursing. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
just being as weird as possible at all times as you get older. Oh, I love it so much.
Yeah, I
Um
cannot wait for my obsessed with my lawn era in life.
Hey, Tyler, I got news. That can
Huh?
start whenever you want.
No, it can't. I don't have a lawn.
Well, get one, and then it can happen whenever you have a lawn. You can
In this
also then you
economy?
can Truly. You can also go to a
Seriously.
community garden.
And just yell at people at the community garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey.
100%. Hey, you kids, get off my community garden. Oh, wait.
I can dig this. I like this for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
Good.
you could become a groundskeeper. And then it's someone else's lawn, but you're still tending to it. Being a groundskeeper.
Keep that in mind next month. But back to the
Yeah.
Oh no.
not mom, but I can work it. Okay.
Oh God.
Yeesh, babish.
Okay.
Yeesh, babish.
So there's a bunch of children playing this game where they chant around a fire.
Yes, there is. But also, there's the shot is returned to. They have bobbing for apples, and they were doing that earlier, and they do this POV like from the bottom of the container,
Barrel.
and yes, thank you. And I hate it. It's so sickening to me seeing a child's face submerged in water trying to bite an apple. I was like, you're so sick for this. You should be put in prison. I hate it so much. I hate to see it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
I didn't
That's
hate it that bad. Like I hated it for what it was, which is a child drowning. But go off.
No, I mean even when they're playing bobbing for apples and they're just like
No, I know.
showing
I'm just-
you, yeah, but yeah.
So also to be noted is that not included in this party is a child named Miranda who is sick in bed with a cold. This is the host family of Ariadne. The little girl has a cold, and everyone thinks that the cold she's coming down with is the one she caught from Miranda. But Miranda is in no shape to be at a party.
No, she's
So
So
reading
obviously
instead.
suspect number one.
Yeah, truly.
But back to the child chanting.
So frightening.
How unsettling on a scale of 1
Yeah.
to 10 for y'all?
I wrote nothing scarier than children chanting around a fire.
Let me see. I also made a note of it. Let me see what the exact is. It just says children chanting, and it just a thumbs down. I do miss
Yeah.
a good chant, though.
But like it wasn't even like a good chant, I felt. Like unsettling, sure, but like
Mhm.
I feel like most things chanted.
True. I do think as well, they make mention that the Snapdragon game is often played at Christmas, and I'm like, how terrible to chant that at Christmas time. Because the game is you put a bunch of rum raisins in a fire and have to plick them out or something.
Like
Which is
something
such a wild-
nonsensical.
Yeah, which is a wild game anyway, because it's like, oh, good, we're trying to extract things from a fire with children. Like that seems extremely unsafe.
Sometimes you just need to
Melissa.
do something to feel.
Melissa, it was the 90s. It was fine.
I mean, in the 1890s?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I have a little bit more leeway or like grace to give that activity as someone who has talked about this before in the podcast of having firecracker fights growing up. So like
Yeah.
maybe I just live in a slightly different world. I'm kind of realizing more as I get older. I'm kind of a dirtbag in a way that wasn't necessarily apparent to me. And maybe I should move back to Brooklyn. I don't know. Anyway.
The chanting is happening. We're really reaching a fever pitch with the lightning and the thunder. And then the maid discovers an unseen body. So, Ariadne Oliver calls Poirot and tells him that she will never be able to look at another apple again.
Which
And-
is funny because she had been eating all of them throughout the
Yeah.
party.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And then we cut to a shot of Joyce drowned in the apple bobbing tub, murdered. Because it would be very difficult to just drown. How would you just drown in an it was definitely a murder.
Yeah. I mean, you could,
Well,
if
yeah.
you accidentally breathed in the water trying to bite the apple and then just got stuck or something. And that's why I don't play bobbing for apples.
Okay.
Or
Yeah,
like,
I could see
you
that.
know, if you had like some kind of narcotic given to you beforehand that like knocks you out, like you could like without even realizing, like fall asleep in, you know,
And that's why I don't
water.
do narcotics.
Fair.
Okay.
Two great
Uh,
Nerd.
tastes that go bad together. Have you bobbed for apples?
Yes.
Okay. I have as well at a Halloween party growing up, and I was like, this is terrible.
I don't think I
Yeah.
ever did it growing up. I think I did it at the
Oh.
theater company I used to run. We had a Halloween event, and we had that after the show that we put on one time.
I'll say
Okay.
this. Even as I have a couple thoughts about bobbing for apples, if I may.
Sure.
First is, even as a child, I was like, this seems unsanitary. We're all going through the
Mm-hmm.
same apples here. This water is stagnant. This is
Yeah.
not good.
Hmm.
And then the other thought I had was kids bobbing for apples, silly fun, a wet time for everybody. Um, Adults bobbing for apples, unbelievably horny. I don't know why, but there's something sensual about like an apple in your mouth and being like wet around other adults that I'm like, that seems like Melissa, you're so real and sick for that to be like, yes, as an adult
I never
with
wanted
a
to
bunch of people.
simultaneously know and unknow somebody's search history.
Fair point. But yeah, no, I think there's something, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'm wrong. You let us know in the comments below.
Please let us.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us all. Gosh, we're gonna regret this. Okay. Uh, also follow us on
Screenshot your
Instagram.
search results to the ADC Reddit that does not exist.
That
Do
does
not create
No,
that.
you can
I
just
no,
don't
don't
want
email it
create.
that.
to me, not to the Amateur Detective Club, but to me personally.
Uh, yeah, we are on Instagram at ADC Pod. Follow us, please.
Excellent plug.
Thanks. So, uh, Poirot, the next day we see, I mean, I assume it's the next day, is on a train, and then a man starts talking to him, and he is annoyed. And this guy's got some scruffy hair, and he tells Poirot that he's a gardener. His name is Michael Garfield.
And he
And
hates Mondays.
Poirot says, "Yeah, I'm going to see about a murder." Because he introduces himself as Hercule Poirot and Michael Gardner. I keep wanting to call him Michael Gardner because he's a
Mm-hmm.
gardener, and his
That is
last name
true.
it starts with a G. So if I do that,
Starts with a
you get it.
gar.
It
Yeah.
does. You get it. Garfield, Gardner, whatever. Um,
Just imagine a silent the if it happens.
yeah, Michael the Gardner.
Mm.
Exactly.
Exactly. Poirot shows him the article in the newspaper about Joyce being murdered. And Garfield is like, yeah, nope, that's worse. Michael says that he's going to the same,
Yeah.
the same, just, it's just the lasagna cat if I just say
Yeah, yeah.
Garfield.
Yeah,
For
man.
me, it's even worse because now I'm thinking about Pamela Anderson. If you know, you know.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't
That
know.
monstrosity, you should know. So Poirot is like, "Do you know this gal that's dead?" And he's like, "Pff, that'd be crazy if I did. She's 13." Oh, that'd be. He's like, "I know of her, I guess." What do you mean? Is this kid my friend? That's
Ugh.
crazy.
Poirot asks Michael about the local gossip.
Mm.
And he says, "Do you believe in witches?" There's some really good scene enders in this. There's a lot of like just cutting to, they don't over explain stuff. I feel like they just cut to the next thing.
Yeah.
You know what it kind of reminded me of? The cuts from the Haunting of Venice a bit.
Okay.
Well, that makes sense. Consider
I
this
mean,
is the story that
obviously.
is based on. But yeah, that it does
It
make sense as
is?
well.
Yeah.
This is yeah,
I
they're
mean,
both
it's a
adaptations of the
very
same novel.
different, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is really cool because they are similar, obviously, but like, yeah, fundamentally vibes completely different.
Yeah,
Okay,
Branagh, your
I
woke Poirot wouldn't give us dead children.
I was like, how is it possible that there are two bobbing for apples Poirot stories?
I missed what you said. I'm so
But yeah, I love that that's the because that would be wild. Like of all the things, like
How is there a plot
how would
point
there
of
be? Yeah,
two different Poirot stories that involve bobbing for apples? Like that would be insane. Okay, I
Ugh.
see. I see what happened. I'm like, gosh,
Um,
there did feel like there was something familiar about it.
yeah.
And I'm like, but I don't think we've read this or seen something. Okay, I get it now. Okie
Yeah.
doke.
I would say as well, while we're talking about the adaptation, this one's written by Mark Gatiss of Sherlock fame, which is
I thought
Oh,
I
interesting.
recognized his name. Okay, yeah,
Yeah. And
okay.
I would say the script's quite good.
I mean, we'll
Yeah,
get into it, but I agree.
yeah, I
Hmm.
also like it. So yes, but then there's a lot of little scenes here and there. We've got the Drake siblings sniping at each other.
Yeah, because we're going into
Playing
Poirot's
Halo.
interviews next,
Not
right? Not
uh,
quite yet.
kind of. His interviews also in this are quite brief. We get like the crux of them basically, except for the one long one that we need.
Hmm.
But yes.
But he also goes to the local constable, and like he's like, "I don't want to work with you at all. Let's leave this to the modern police and the modern to the professionals, basically."
Before he goes to the inspector, he comes in and he goes to the butler's house where Ariadne Oliver is also staying. Like the first person he goes to see is
Mm.
Ariadne, and Miranda and her mom invite him in, and Ariadne is now sick in bed with the cold that we were referencing earlier. So Poirot is asking her about like the victimology, and everyone's recounting what Joyce said at the party. There's just a whole lot of echoing of this kid tells tall tales.
You
Yes.
just used a term, victimology. I've
Mhm.
never heard. I assume that's just like what happened to the victim.
Oh, it is when finding out what the victim was like. So in an
Okay, yeah.
investigation, when whoever's investigating the crime, they find out about the victim, like what did they do? What were they like? Who could possibly be mad at them?
Mm,
Uh, and it often helps solve the crime because,
mm.
this guy was a huge womanizer and had a lot of
Like,
girlfriends.
you could have said this
Turns
guy
out,
was a huge woman. And good
okay.
for her,
I mean, maybe,
honestly.
yeah.
You know?
Right, yeah, for sure. No, he was a womanizer. This guy was a womanizer. He had a bunch of girlfriends. Turns out one of the girlfriends killed him. Makes
Mm,
sense. So it
yeah,
just helps you kind of figure out suspects. I listen to a lot of true crime famously. So
famously.
So for our
Yeah.
famously.
subscribers on Patreon, the word of the day is victimology.
For the younger listeners, that would be the lore, I think, is the term being thrown about. The lore
Okay.
of the victim.
Wow,
Sure,
that
yeah.
sounds mad lit.
Wow. I love
They definitely
madlets.
still
I need a noun
say both
and
those words.
I need an occupation. I need a verb.
Wait, quick floss break.
So he goes to
Well, he was
Ariadne.
at Ariadne's. She's sick.
Yes.
Hmm.
She's in bed.
And this kid was just a little liar.
Yeah,
So
about the crime
The
Miranda's
wolf.
little kid, you mean not Miranda, but Joyce.
Joyce, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Miranda's mom
Joyce.
says that Miranda's dad had died before Miranda was born. Poirot was asking about what happened to her dad because he's a curious little guy.
I am just a curious little fellow.
So it is at this point that Poirot goes to see the police, and this inspector is like convinced that
Play Roxanne.
okay,
I'm
yeah.
so sorry. I just
Yeah.
imagine Poirot in a police car singing Sting.
Oh my god.
This investigator assumes it was just a guy, a peeping lunatic who saw these
Hey, don't
all
bring me
these
into this.
saw all these kids outside the window and just wanted to go in and do a murder on one of them.
like like a pie on a windowsill. This murder floated by. It's like, well, I gotta murder this gal. She seems really annoying.
We might need to
Honestly,
cut that because I might use that as my defense. But continue.
Okay.
honestly, it is basically what he's saying.
Yeah, dude. Pretty thin argument.
Yeah, and Poirot says, "Okay, did you interview the people at the party?" And he's like, "Of course I did." And we did not follow up at all, but none of them
Mhm.
did it. Clearly, I mean, we're looking for the guy, but who knows? We might find him. We don't want your help, Hercule Poirot. And
The world's greatest
Poirot,
detective.
yeah, Poirot just stares at this guy. It's amazing. He just gives him the most withering stare. Okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna go to the scene of the crime. Bye. They're in the garden, and Garfield, it turns out, is the gardener of Mrs. Drake's garden. The gardener of Mrs. Drake's garden. Garfield is the gardener of Mrs. Drake's garden. What a
Garfield is
good
the garden.
sentence.
This is great. Garfield is the garden of Mrs. Drake.
So he's getting kind of flirty. Like he keeps like giving these looks like the beauty always brings me back and looks right at Mrs. Butler and she seems annoyed.
She
So,
throws up in her mouth.
mhm.
I mean,
She's like,
honestly,
"Ugh."
like, I get it. I was in Brooklyn once, at
Oh,
like on a corner, like in order to cross the street, and this man rolls down his window, smiled at me, ruined my whole day.
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah. I mean, what I was doing in a car, I'll never know. But yeah, that's understandable. I mean, I think there is something about like unwanted attention like that. It's like, ugh.
It's true. Mrs. Then Joyce's mom is Mrs. Reynolds. That is her name. She's in the black clothing for mourning. And her
And
son,
afternoon.
mhm. And she and her son Leopold meet with Poirot. And she didn't see an intruder at the party. And Poirot's like, "Oh, you think it's an intruder?" She's like, "Well, that's what the police think." But yes, so also agreeing with Joyce, like to tell tall tales. Why, Poirot, do you keep asking about the fact that she said that she saw a murder? Like, how could that possibly matter? And he says, "Old sins cast long shadows."
Which is a really good line.
It is.
Like, it sounds like something Victoria Winters would write in a diary in an episode of Dark Shadows.
I love it.
And they also are insisting that this tramp who is the murderer is also they vehemently keep referring to him as him. They're like, it's some crazy man who came
Yeah.
Insert
in and
Powerpuff Girls him.
yes. Ooh, I can't help but murder children. Yeah. Clicky
Yeah.
clack clack clack. That's the sound of the claws.
No, I thought his little high heels.
Oh, both. He's on all fours. Stop him. He's running
Oh
like an
no!
animal.
I don't like where this is going.
We get a cut of Poirot going into the library where Joyce was found dead. And he looks at the apple tub and sees next to it the rug is like soaking wet. In the next scene, Poirot goes to visit Mrs. Goodbody, who is the best person ever, as we previously said. Um,
She really is.
she's so great. So Poirot is like, okay, anyone who died of natural causes, do not care. What about suspicious deaths? Tell me everything. And she says, okay, we got three. One is Mrs. Llewellyn Smythe, who died 2.5 years ago. She was Rowena Drake's old aunt. She was super old, but she was in really good health. So everyone's like, huh, weird. It doesn't really seem like, she should have died, but I guess she was old. Um, and so it was kind of sudden, but like maybe she was poisoned, but maybe it was old age. She had an au pair recently, somewhat recently, who was in her trust, and her name was Olga.
Yeah, there's a fun little line where she calls her an opera girl.
Oh
And
yeah.
Poirot's like, what? But what?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Silly little
mean
fun
au
little bit of
pair?
an
Yes.
epiga.
Yes, exactly. And then the next one is this guy, Mr. Leslie Ferrier, who was a lodger of Mrs. Reynolds.
Lodger.
Um, mhm. And he was also like the clerk to the solicitor, the lawyer. And he was stabbed, which is an obvious murder. And Joyce had said that it wasn't clearly a murder, you
Could
know.
have fallen. As we
Into a
learned
knife.
in the musical Chicago, a man ran into a knife, ran into her knife 10 times. He
Could
had it
be an
coming.
What
accident.
are the odds of
Yeah.
that? Yeah. It's a
Hmm.
funny old thing, life. That's kind of the kind of story you don't hear much about, but it does happen.
Yeah,
When it
it
really
does
sticks
happen.
with you.
Oh boy.
Exactly. So then the third and last is Beatrice White, who was the school teacher. And she was found like Ophelia. If y'all know the painting of Ophelia,
Mm-hmm.
it just in a lake or whatever, very drowned. So she was extremely
Very drowned, very mindful.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but this girl seems very drowned.
yeah.
Well, the prognosis I'd say is.
So she was extremely close with
Mm,
the church organist Miss Whitaker, if you know what I mean. They were like really good friends.
yeah.
The local school teacher?
Hmm.
Hmm. Yes.
Have you have you had Whitaker's chocolate,
Yeah.
Melissa?
Whitman's?
Yeah,
Whitaker's?
Whitaker's.
No, I
I mean, I
haven't.
know what
It's
a
really
Whitman
good.
sampler is as well, though.
Sure, of
Yeah.
course. Whitaker's, what's Whitaker's chocolate?
It's a British Australian New Zealand chocolate. It's quite good. I really want a chocolate bar now, and I'm really upset I don't have a Whitaker's chocolate bar with peanuts in front of me.
Okay, well, I'm upset about
Because
that too, because now I want one.
yeah, well,
All right, we're just gonna be.
I think we
If
could
you hadn't
probably
told me,
find
it
any import.
wouldn't. No, I was trying to make what occurred a thing, but
Would it would
I'm
occur to
thinking
you?
too hard.
It's
Okay.
yeah, it's quite
So
good. I'd highly
yes.
recommend if you find it at an import store. It's
Okay.
good, proper chocolate.
Also, probably like a few bodegas, I'm sure we'll have it, probably in like Manhattan. Ooh, the
Yeah, they're
one
Probably.
that's over by
mhm.
where we rehearsed for Whimsical World of Sherlock. That
Mm.
bodega has a lot of imported candies and things.
Oh, okay. Very good to know. Another thing about the solicitor's clerk who was stabbed, he was dating Miss Drake, the
Oh,
younger Drake.
Yeah,
Yes.
young Miss
Uh,
Drake.
yeah. So that is the stories that Poirot has gotten from Mrs. Goodbody, the witch. She's not a
Who is a
witch, or
really
is she?
is she? She
I
does
mean,
tea
not
leaf
confirmed.
readings. Yeah.
True.
And she's like a really fun the performance is so good.
Yeah.
And it's like really like well what very like matter of fact old British lady, you know.
Yes.
And I
What's
believe mhm,
what's the witch class?
divination.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So then Poirot goes to see the solicitor, Mr. Fullerton, and he confirms, yes, the murder of Mr. Ferrier, the clerk, and says that the will of Mrs. Smythe was super sketchy. Basically, she disinherited her blood relatives, the Drakes, and she left everything to Olga, the au pair. But it was found to be a forgery, and then Olga up and left soon afterwards.
Smart
Yes.
girl.
And then
Clever gal.
also Ferrier was already in trouble with this guy because he was already like snooping around documents. He's like making copies of other people's stuff, and he was like about. He says, and I was about to give him a formal warning when all this happened. I'm like, a formal warning is gonna stop a criminal? Are you stupid, old man? Get real.
Yeah, he was a forger. Yes. So then we get to see Ariadne Oliver. She's trying to write. There's this whole bit that she does
Mm,
about she's trying to write this book and she's not having a good time. It's very
yeah,
difficult. Poirot comes to visit and he kind of just runs everything by her.
she's writing. What is her Finnish character's name? Like Hans Jensenberger.
Um,
Meisterburger.
I write it.
But anyway, the book she's working on is, I think, a clear analog to Death in the Clouds, where the murder takes place on a hot air balloon, which is like crazy to think about, considering a hot air balloon is like 5 feet in diameter.
Yeah,
Surely
gosh,
you know who did it.
one would think.
Unless it's like an Ollie Ollie Oxenfree where you like the detective turns around.
That would be
Anyway,
wild.
Yeah, the only
Um,
thing I wrote was Sven. Does Sven
Sven?
mean anything? Was Sven the character?
it might be.
I'll Google it.
Okay.
So I
Um,
have Ariadne Sven book. I don't know what that meant to myself.
it was at the beginning when Joyce is asking her about her, what she writes. Joyce does say, "Why a Finn?" And Ariadne is like, "Ugh, I ask myself the same question all the time." And it is a very clear analog to Agatha Christie writing Poirot. And because she kind of famously got kind of sick of writing Poirot, but
Yeah,
she couldn't stop because everyone loved it.
it's true.
Uh,
Yep.
Careful what you wish for.
Poirot,
Sven
the original
Henderson.
Medea. Sorry?
Sven Hjerson.
Okay.
Hjerson.
Okay.
Ugh, good luck
Yeah,
with
I would
that.
not have gotten that spelling.
Yes, very, very Scandinavian name. Then they go to church. And
Take me to
during
church.
during church, Mrs. Drake asks Poirot to come over for lunch with her and her
Which
miserable children, is what I wrote.
which is rude under normal church circumstances. They are not just at a church, they are at a funeral. They are at the
Oh, is it the
funeral
funeral?
for the child who has died. And then she
Oh,
leans over and is like, hey, do you want to come to dinner or lunch or whatever? And he's
oh
like,
gosh.
Because
lady.
is it a funeral or is it a celebration? A celebration of life of this young soul.
I think it's a
Yeah.
funeral, Tyler. I think both you and I. I'm sorry. I get very gracious of you, but
Garfield goes to Mrs. Butler and Miranda. Yeah, all right. Michael the gardener asks if he can have tea with Mrs. Butler and Miranda, and Mrs. Butler is like, "No, I don't think so. She's been unwell. Bye."
just all but pick up Miranda and throw her over her shoulder and run out of the
Yeah,
church.
she does not like this man.
Yeah.
Poirot notices that Leopold has a pricey watch. Leopold is the brother of Joyce. And he's like, "Yeah, I saved up some pocket money. Also, my sister kind of sucked. I hated her. I'm glad she was dead." It's like, okay,
Which is crazy to say under the
cool.
best of circumstances.
Yeah,
To
it's
be like,
really wild.
because he says something to the effect of like, I'm supposed to be all broken up about it, but the truth is, I didn't even like her. And then he just storms past, and I'm like, children have no sense of self-preservation.
Yeah, I think he's like, what do we think? Is he like 15 or 16? He
I
seems a
think he's
little older.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely a teenager. He's definitely like the older brother.
Yeah.
Also, we should say there Joyce's mom, whose name I can't remember, she's been like really leaning into, oh, God has called my daughter home. Like he has a plan for everything. She's like really on that slant of the everything, and
Yeah,
that's a lot
it's a
to
lot.
handle.
Yep. Um,
Yeah.
the Reverend says that Mrs. Reynolds is Joyce's stepmother. He's telling this to Poirot. He says that Joyce makes up stories, another person, but he also adds that she kind of takes other people's stories and adopts them. And he talks about this instance where someone, I don't remember who, had gone traveling and telling stories about the Maharaja and tigers and elephants. And suddenly Joyce was telling these stories as if they were her own.
I believe it was her father went to India.
Okay, her father. Great. So then later, Poirot asks Miss Whitaker
Mm.
about Beatrice White, her very good friend. And Miss Whitaker doesn't really want to talk about it. She's like, "Why are you asking about that? That was clearly an accident. It was a shame. I only realized how much she felt for me after she was already gone when it was too late." And she's very sad and wistful.
I think that
Apparently,
actor. Hmm.
I know I've seen her too. I was trying to figure out what I know her from. Mrs. Reynolds, Joyce's mom, did not like Beatrice White, this gay teacher, and wanted her out of the school.
It's true.
Wanted her out and wanted her out.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly right. So Poirot meets Michael in the garden. Michael is talking about how the garden is bad luck because bad things happen there. Like they were doing basically witch tests back in the day.
We might even
They
say
were
bad things take root.
Oh boy, Tyler, that was very smart.
Right.
That's
Quite
exactly
clever.
it. Yeah. He tells Poirot about dunking, where if the woman floated, she was a witch, but if she sank, she wasn't a witch. But she also drowned. So
Yeah.
bad luck either way.
Fernella Woolgar is this actor's name, and she
Okay.
plays Agatha Christie in Doctor Who, and that is where you and I
That's
know her from.
it.
Oh,
Yes, it's
Yes.
absolutely it. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's the best. Yes.
Harvey Wallbanger. Yeah. Oh,
Oh my
that's
gosh.
too salty. Yeah,
Oh my
etc.,
gosh,
etc.
she
Hmm.
does.
She
Yes.
sees a
Okay.
giant bee.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that episode's so nuts. I love it so
I
much.
miss when Doctor Who was about big bees.
but
They had to rule with feminism. Oh
Oh my
no, I
gosh.
need to catch up on it. But anyway, yeah, she's Agatha Christie, which
Yeah,
is
me too.
pretty funny given the
Oh my
circumstances.
gosh. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Okay. Garfield talks about Olga a little bit and says that, she was beautiful, but not his type.
Yeah,
Uh,
which
and
foreboding.
then,
yeah, I've used that line before. I know what that means. You've been rejected.
Yeah.
oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Whereas I said it out loud, I was like, what is she too young? Too old? What is your type? Because I'm immediately suspicious of this guy, the way he's been acting around what's her name and her daughter. Like
well,
an absolute creep.
the second time I watched it, I figured out which direction it was,
Yes.
seemingly. Poirot says that he's about to go have lunch with Rowena Drake, and Michael says, "Oh, well, make sure you don't look at her directly and make sure you can only see her reflection as if this woman is Medusa or something."
It's a good line, and he delivers it quite funnily,
He
but it
does.
is like also deeply uncomfortable. This guy knocks it out of the park, I think.
We have a little scene with Ariadne talking to Miranda while
Mhm.
Ariadne is still sick in bed. And Miranda is clearly lonely because it's like just her and her mom most of the time. And then her friend Joyce has now died. So, like, she's happy to have someone else around, even though Ariadne has not been sick. And Ariadne says she's not the best company. Then we go to lunch, and I write, the Drake siblings are the worst. I just can't stand them arguing with each other. I'm an only child. It's very upsetting to me.
I'm like,
Grow up,
that's life.
Melissa.
I mean, not that
Yes.
mean, but like,
They're so
Yeah,
mean to each other.
they are. They're absolute fuckwits. To be sure. Like,
She also, this Miss Drake does not like Olga and says some pretty gross things about her.
yeah, nah, yeah.
that
Yeah,
is,
Yeah.
yeah.
dude. This is the scene where she tells him to shut up in a way that's like really just juvenile in
Yeah.
the worst way. So yeah, to Melissa's point, agreed.
So they're talking about Mrs. Smythe, the aunt, and Mrs. Drake also mentions that her husband was run over by a motor car. And
Yeah,
then and then her aunt died and like they've
if you can believe
inherited
it,
everything.
if you can believe it, a toad was riding a motor car and he run down my husband. It was a
Basically.
wild ride, if you can believe it.
Yeah, essentially.
Do you think Smythe as a last name was just Smith mispronounced?
Or is Smith mispronounced Smythe?
Oh,
You know, I hadn't thought of it that way, Tyler. Thank you for bringing some perspective into this debate.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's
It's a
it's what I
thinker.
do.
It's a thing to think about. So they're talking about Olga and the whole business, and Poirot's suspicions are piqued.
And they say also Francis Drake, the Miss Drake, his first name is Francis, and Francis
Yeah,
Drake is like a famous what author or something.
Hmm.
And
yeah.
she's like, I hate it, and her mom's like, it's fine, and she's like, you don't have to live with it. She's like clearly mad all the time. She's always smoking. She's like just got the worst attitude. She's clearly stressed.
So they go out to take a walk in the garden, and Michael Garfield is there, as he often is. And Mrs. Drake tries to kick him out. She's like, "Get out of here, you so and so." And he says he can't help it because it's such a lovely view. And Miss Drake, it seems like, thinks that this is about her, and she starts kind of preening and primping.
Hmm.
Um, and Rowena's going off about, "Ugh, I can't stand this guy. He's always hanging about," and starts to kind of insinuate that maybe he was Joyce's murderer, but then Poirot's like, he couldn't have killed Joyce. He has the best alibi possible because it's Poirot.
Yeah,
Because,
he was in Athens at the time. I've already checked.
yeah.
Um, I feel like a real missed opportunity when he's like, it's just such a beautiful view. It should have gone from Francis and panned over to her brother, also interested, and then panned over to the mom, who is disgusted. I feel like just missed opportunity.
That would have been
But
fun.
thanks.
Mrs. Goodbody goes for a visit with the vicar, and he's like, she says, that detective has been to see me. And she's kind of asking about his scheme with Olga and is kind of making insinuations that maybe the vicar had some ill intent with
Mm.
Olga. Um, but he says, no, she let me down. I never tried again, but no, of course not. What you're implying is not true.
Mm.
Um, After that, we get a scene with Poirot looking around at the pictures at the butler's house. He's examining all of their family photos. Then we cut to Ariadne is in bed, asleep at night,
Oh,
and
right.
she starts to hear rumblings in her room, and she sees there's like a shoe that appears by the bed, and there is a scary pumpkin head man above her.
Yeah.
And then she wakes up because it was a dream and smashes a bottle.
Because y'all don't know Jack O'Lantern.
Oh boy.
Exactly.
Do you think a pumpkin's the scariest gourd?
Sorry?
Do you think a pumpkin is the scariest gourd?
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So
Out of
what
all the
other
gourds, is
what other
zucchini?
gourds are we talking here? Oh, there's a zucchini, sure. Or a
Is a zucchini a
vegetable
good gourd?
marrow. As is it? I don't know.
What do they call it in England as well?
What?
Zucchini's the Italian word for it.
Is it a marrow, vegetable marrow?
There's
Or
that, and there's also the French word for it. Anyway, gourds. Gonna look up gourds.
good.
Cucumbers is what I'm thinking.
What's
Pumpkins,
that?
melons, and squash.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess pumpkin is the scariest one.
Hmm.
I don't know. Like I think like an acorn squash, depending on like how big.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I feel like for me, a cucumber is probably the scariest. Just
And
because they're
butternut just sounds
so good.
commanding.
Tyler. Oh, that's good. Did misspell gourds, but Google did not let me down. I spelled it with
All
no
right.
U, you know?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Zucchini. Oh, zucchini is also known as summer squash, so that's probably why I
Oh,
thought.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Squash.
Oh, a courgette
A
is the other word
courgette.
for it. A
Oh,
courgette,
okay.
which is the French word, of course. Anyhow, so
So Poirot is
gourds.
hanging out with his good buddy Ariadne, and she says, I had a weird encounter that I hadn't thought to tell you about with Mrs. Rowena Drake. She dropped a vase. The water just went all over her. It seemed like she was startled by something in the hallway right by the library. So it looks like she's looking over to where Joyce had died, which made her drop the vase. She just dismisses it. Rowena did anyway.
Mhm.
So, next scene, Mrs. Goodbody tells Mrs. Reynolds that there is a curse on her, which is something
Cool.
I would like to do. Is just start going and be like, hello, you know there's a curse on you, right? In my old age, just
Again, great
run
news. You can
No.
around.
start doing that whenever you want, Melissa.
No, I really do think that some things just come with age.
You know, that's
Yeah.
fair. I guess it's coming from, I think my point of view is coming from someone who's in their 30s, and I've decided I'm going to start calling anyone in their 20s kid.
Oh, great. They
I
love
think
that,
there's
I'm
a level
sure.
of exhaustion. I think there's a level of world weariness that I've had my entire life that's finally earned by this point.
Okay.
Okay, sport, whatever you say.
Yeah. See, you're older than me. You're allowed. It's a trickle down. It's trickle down pet names. Well,
Oh, goodness. She's like, look, Mrs. Reynolds, your husband, your daughter, and I said I wrote lifter and that's wrong. Oh, her lodger. Lodger is what I meant to write. Okay, thanks, autocorrect.
hmm.
They're all dead. Now who's next? In our next scene, we
She
have Poirot. Yes,
looks directly at the camera. It could be you.
basically.
We need to clip that just for like whatever promotional purposes we can use it for.
It
Any
could be
giveaways? It could
you.
be you.
Yes. Yeah. Um, so we have a little scene where Poirot and Mrs. Drake are talking about the vase incident. She says she didn't see anything. Poirot's pressing her because he's like, "You didn't see anything? You just dropped a vase? Really? This might be important." He's much gentler than I just said it, but
I
he's
kind of like to think
pressing
of it as like the
and
case of the vase personally, but
the case of the vase. There you go. She's insisting that she is in no danger, and then she's like, "Oh, hold on, I gotta go see about this other thing." Bye.
The
Uh,
case with the face is a Dr. Seuss book that is coming into my head, where it's like Columbo, but in the style of Dr. Seuss, and I think
ooh, what is
one more
Tristan gonna
question
rhyme with?
for
And
you.
one more thing.
Yeah, one more question for you. Press much for you, but anyway.
we have a little scene in the library where the Drake siblings are discussing witches because this guy is
Oh my
reading about
God.
witches, and
An
um,
absolute sick fuck, this guy. He's an absolute sick freak. He is. He's like reading about witches, and he just goes, "I'm terribly morbid," and he's just an absolute sicko.
He's talking about like, oh yes, the witches, they were treated kind of like the way that Joyce died, calling back to the dunking story earlier. And I wrote, it's very cool and not at all gross. Very,
Dunkin'
very
Donut
gross.
started in like New England area, right?
That's true, yeah.
Dunkin' Damsels, is that a thing?
Oh boy.
We're getting back to the roots of this country more now than ever. Now here at Dunkin' Donuts, I'm gonna fucking dunk your sister if she doesn't stop mouthing off to me. I'll tell you that much for free. Wait.
Oh goodness.
These fucking come on.
So we get a scene of Poirot in the garden talking to Miranda, who is the same height as he is, notably.
You know, completely observed, and yeah, it did break my brain because you were 100% correct. That's twice in one episode.
Good. I this is what I aim for. Yes, Miranda says that she and Joyce used to share secrets, so she really misses her. Joyce never told Miranda that she'd seen a murder.
Hmm.
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 Interesting. So we cut to a scene. It is Poirot at the inspector's office. He shows the forged will to Poirot, and Poirot asks to see Leslie Ferrier's belongings. And the inspector's attitude is very much like, all right, why not? We're just having a field day on everything, aren't we? As he looks at it, there's a framed picture of Miss Drake, and Poirot's like, seems like there's something else in this frame. And he finds another copy of the will, and he goes off to the solicitor's office, and he shows it to the solicitor, and he looks at this will. He's like, oh, this is a much better forgery than the one that we had at the will reading. They call the will something else, by the way, and I never bothered to write it down. But they call it something that I've never heard before in my life.
I believe it's the way. If it's not a will, it's a way.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. No.
Yeah, gug.
Great.
I thought that was like curds or.
Now I'm thinking about Kurds on Jacks from Deep Space Nine.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
Kurds on Way.
That's
Which also sounds
that's a Trek.
Yes.
Trek reference.
Curzon Dax, yes.
Yeah. Kurds on Way would be a YouTube channel that she has based around reviewing oatmeal, which is what Kurds and Whey is. If you don't know, it's basically oatmeal.
Yes. It seems like they never found what they think the real will is, but because that clearly forged will was there, they were just like, I guess we leave it to we just give it to the family then. Cool, great.
Crazy. Just to shrug your shoulders and be like, I don't know. It's better than going to the state. I don't know.
I feel like it's the default is if you have family, it'll just go to you.
Next to kin,
next to kin.
Though I will say, as morbid as this is, like it is important to have a will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have much. Even if you're gonna leave a will.
It should be willent, shouldn't it? Instead of won't.
Say more?
Will I am.
Oh.
Willent. Yeah, will I am. Like willent.
I think the etymology kind of is that, but it kind of gradually became won't.
That makes sense.
Much like All Hallows Eve and Halloween. So in the next scene, Leopold is seen walking outside, and there's ominous music. That's it. So then it's a little bit later because it's darker. That's how we know. And Mrs. Drake, Rowena, runs into Michael Garfield and doesn't seem very happy about it at all. So then Miss Whitaker, the next morning, goes to the water and finds Leopold drowned, much like her beloved Beatrice White was. So, yeah, it is kind of a, yeah, that's where we are now. So then the inspector has arrived, Poirot has arrived, they're investigating the death scene, and the inspector now wants Poirot's help because he's just like, okay, now that her brother's dead, I haven't the slightest idea what the heck is happening. Please help me. And Poirot's very gracious about this after one little moment of like, oh, yeah, so now you want my help. Okay, all right. Well, yes,
As
all
he
right.
should.
Yes,
Mhm.
he should. So Poirot discusses with Miss Whitaker a little bit more about Beatrice's death. And he says, so the thing is, it wasn't an accident. I don't think it was a murder, though. But wasn't it a suicide? And she's like, yeah, it was. There was a note, but I didn't want her to have that last indignity of an unconsecrated grave because, you know, the whole like religion, if you die by suicide, then you don't
Get into heaven.
get into heaven, and she didn't want her to suffer from that, which is very sweet. And of course, Poirot's not going to say anything about that kind of thing, but we can kind of cross that one off the list of these mysterious deaths that we think that Joyce was referring to. Mrs. Reynolds is having a hell of a time, and she starts comparing herself to the biblical figure of Job, who just endures all these trials. The vicar tells Poirot that he brought Olga to Mrs. Smythe to try and like help her out.
He
And
had constructed a scheme for basically visa sponsorship for these people from Czechoslovakia
Not
yes,
American
that he
Express.
had, yeah, that had a murder on the American Express. What is in your wallet? But basically, he was just trying to help more than just Olga, but like several young people come and acclimatize to America as like kind of missionary work in reverse. It was kind of his whole pitch.
yeah,
It's like I'm trying to do a bit of good.
yeah. And that was his whole experiment. He's like, it really just didn't work out well at all. Her parents are so mad at me because she never went back home and never wrote to them. Also, I just gotta say, it is so clear that this woman disappeared. Throughout the whole thing, everyone has just been like, ah, she ran away.
Yeah.
She just left. And no one is suspicious. And I'm sitting there like, what in the heck happened to this woman?
They ain't Christian.
There you go.
True. I would love a splice between the vicar holding up a phone or something, and then on the other is others. I will find you. I have a very specific set of skills.
Oh my
You
gosh,
know.
back when I was a Twitch streamer, somebody like requested that I do that monologue during stream once, and it was like the weirdest thing.
That's so funny.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Someone had a very
Had like a Taken thing.
I guess.
And we're quite taken with my Taken because they subscribed. And you can too, if I stream again.
We cut to Miranda on the phone talking to someone where she says, this child says, yes, I understand sacrifices are sometimes necessary. Oh, someone's coming. She hangs up and Poirot comes in the door. Right? What the heck's that
And
about?
on the other
That
end
seems...
is I have a very specific set of skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you imagine Liam Neeson with an old rotary phone, like holding it like that, trying to do? It wouldn't be as intimidating if he had to hold both of them, like the top hat and anyway.
That's true. So Mrs. Drake now says that she saw Leopold in the hall when she dropped the vase and thought that he was the killer. But now clearly he couldn't possibly be the killer. He just discovered Joyce's body. Now that he's been murdered, he couldn't have been him.
As if murder-suicides don't exist.
So yes, she has changed her story about the vase, and that is what it is. Then Poirot is kind of mulling things over, talking it out with Mrs. Butler, I believe, and Ariadne in her sickbed. And Poirot goes, "It was there all along. The Maharaja, tigers, elephants." And
Oh
everyone's like,
my.
what? Excuse me, what? I do
Yeah.
not understand. And so he's putting this all together, and he says that Joyce didn't make up the story. She appropriated the story from the person who she shared her secrets with, Miranda. And they're like, okay, we got to go to Miranda. They go to her room. Miranda's not in her room. Oh, no. What is going on?
Seems bad.
Seems very bad. So they rush outside. And in the meantime, we get a cut to the garden. And there is Miranda with this like little angelic gauzy white cloak. And she is with a man in a scary mask and a black cloak. And it's just the worst idea that I've ever seen.
Once again with me.
Yes.
Oh, I was thinking nice day for a white wedding, but I also support that choice.
That does have a very similar vibe, yeah, to be sure.
So the man removes his mask and it's Michael Garfield.
The
If
gardener?
only it was.
And he would have gotten away with it too. If it weren't for you dying kids.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so
Sorry.
We're trying to make light of something that is objectively terrible. It's
Yeah.
in a lot of ways a pretty tough watch, guys.
Yeah, actually, as it turns out.
Ourselves sane.
Right,
Better
exactly.
call up Rolex because it's a pretty tough watch.
So Michael Garfield removes his mask and he's telling her all these crazy things. Like, oh yes, the sacrifices we have to make. People used to sacrifice things here. He's convinced her that she has to die so that others can live. It's wild, and she's buying it. She talks about how she is the one that saw that murder, and he says, "Was that also a sacrifice?" And he's like, yeah, it was. Okay, so this, I'm gonna give you this drink, and you're gonna drink it. And she says, "What does it taste like?" And he says, "Whatever you want it to taste like." It is a terrible situation. She takes the cup and she starts hesitating. So at this point, kids, come here, listen up, listen to your Aunt Melissa. If a grown man wants to take you into a garden or anywhere, really, don't go. Don't go. Don't go.
No.
If this
Truly
man
not.
is weaving pretty little stories that sound very wistful and romantic and, I don't know, creative, they are liars. They are liars. They are scary. Stay home. Don't go to strange gardens with strange men. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, no, I mean, like, sure. But
But what if, now hear me out, it's
Yeah.
David Bowie and he's doing fushigi and there's like puppets. What if it's David Bowie and he's doing fushigi though? And he has your kid's sister or whatever the fuck the plot of that gosh darn movie is.
Yeah, that's the plot of the movie.
Ugh.
He stole a baby.
He stole a baby. It's true. I'll say this as well. You're 100% correct, Melissa. And I would like to add, just now, don't go to a second location with anyone you don't know.
Don't
go to a
go
second
to a second location. Do whatever you can to not get in a vehicle. Just this is for everybody. This is for
Yeah.
everybody.
100%.
Don't go to a
Maybe
second
Just your good
location.
pals at the ADC.
I know what you were going for, but you did sound like an Adam Sandler character. Why don't you come and hang out with us with the same man?
This man is now about to force a goblet, it's a literal goblet of poison into this child's mouth as
And what
Poirot
he
arrives in just the right amount of time and
yes.
whacks him with his cane.
Yeah,
Which
take that,
is
action Poirot haters.
I had the same thought also. But it
It's
wouldn't have worked
great.
anyway, because what Michael doesn't know is that she has built up a tolerance to iocane powder. The fool! Speaking of
Uh,
iocane, he got hit in the head. He also swings for it. He really goes for it in a way. Really great job from the stunt team in Suchet
Yeah,
in that
ECW
moment.
would be proud.
Absolutely. Um, so safe inside, Miranda confirms that yes, Joyce had co-opted her story. Um, she thought that the death was an accident, but a necessary accident. And she had seen Michael dragging a body through the garden or the woods or whatever. Um, but she never told Joyce that it was Michael that she saw. She just told her the rest of the story like that. So
Mhm.
Poirot says, okay, well, perhaps it is time for bed. And they all move to like go upstairs and go to sleep. And he says, or perhaps it is time for Poirot to tell you a story, a Halloween story.
Is it just me, or does this bitch get messier and messier, like as the seasons progress?
I don't think it's you. I think the drama. Um,
I hate Andy
Also,
Cohen, but I want him to host a reunion episode.
it also should be noted that at the beginning of the episode, Poirot is listening to the radio along with, as is Miranda at the same time. They're listening to the same station. And it's a Halloween story. And Poirot's butler, whose name is Douglas? No, I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Um, he is like, he asks him to turn it off. And Poirot is like, it's distasteful. There's already so much murder in the world. It's awful. And and the butler's like, "Oh, not me. I love a good grisly story, don't I?" And he's like, "I don't know about that." And he talks about how in Belgium, rather than scaring around this time, they light candles to remember the dead rather than doing a scary story. So this is like a big deal for Poirot to be like, "Oh, let me." He's also dismissed the investigating team from the along with Michael out of the room to do this bit. So it's just the family.
Yes. And he says, it was a dark and stormy night. Isn't that how the stories are supposed to start? Like, it's so good. It's honestly
It does make me think
perfect.
of Snoopy on the typewriter.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So Poirot says that it was Olga who disappeared one day and that she is buried in the garden. That was the death that Miranda, in fact, saw that Joyce was referring to. And because, like I mentioned before, absolutely no one was like, huh, weird that she just went away. It turns out that someone was having an affair with Michael Gardner. Nope, Garfield. Damn it. Uh, Michael the Gardner. And Mrs. Smythe found out about it. And that someone was Rowena Drake. She is super in love with him. Michael Gardner. Michael Garfield hit the husband, hit Mrs. Drake's husband, assumedly Mr. Drake, with a car. Then Rowena Drake
Hmm.
poisoned her aunt.
Hmm.
Um, and they had Ferrier make a really bad forgery of the actual will and hid the actual will behind that picture of Miss Frances Drake so that they would find the forgery, like the really bad forgery, and assume that everything should be left to the family. And the
Hmm.
thing was, Olga had told Mrs. Smythe about this, about Rowena's affair. That was what Mrs. Smythe had come in and complained to the vicar about. That was why, Olga was indeed the trusted confidant, was just looking out for Mrs. Smythe, and was actually a really nice person all along, and was slandered for no reason.
And also stabbed to death for no reason.
Yeah. So
For no reason.
Olga is confronting Rowena Drake, and Rowena stabs Olga, and Michael Garfield is the one who buries her. That is who Miranda saw Michael dragging. They also do that little flashback to Michael Garfield handing Ferrier the money for the forgery stunt, and then Michael stabs him to death instead because they got to keep their money. That is what they're in it for. They want the property, they want the money, and Rowena Drake wants Michael Garfield. Turns out when Joyce said this thing at the Halloween party, Mrs. Drake was so freaked out that she then, in the library by the bobbing apple tub, asks Joyce about this murder. What did I say?
You didn't say
anything.
Oh.
You said bobbing apple tub, and I said boots with the fur.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
Gotcha. So Mrs. Drake asks Joyce about the murder that she saw and figures out which murder she's talking about. And then Rowena Drake drowns Joyce in the apple bucket. And that, as it turns out, is why she was soaking wet. She realizes this, and Poirot points out no adult has played the game of the apple bombing. He says apple bombing, and it's great.
He also says library.
The library? Oh, great.
He says library.
And amazing.
Yeah.
So Rowena Drake sets up the vase stunt to explain why she's wet and makes sure that Ariadne sees her. And afterwards, it turns out Leopold actually had witnessed Mrs. Drake going into the library, but she gives him the watch to help keep him quiet. She's a little freaked out, though, because how long is that going to work? So she asks Michael the gardener, to drown him. He does so, and we should have a lengthened scene of when they meet that night, right after we see Leopold passing by, and Michael shows Mrs. Drake that he even took the watch back and is like, hey, did you get the receipt? Super cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so much child death. So at this point, they parade this guy in. He's been arrested by the inspector because he did so many murders.
None of them in the building.
No, none of them. It's like, yeah, I never loved you, Rowena. I just want this money, you old thing. It's so bad. Also, on top of everything else, Michael is Miranda's dad. Mrs. Butler never told him, but he figured it out. He starts saying, I just like pretty things, you see. One must have money to get the pretty things. What an absolute psycho.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, he screwed over the very nice Mrs. Butler, and Rowena Drake just perpetrated a whole heck of a lot of murders in hoping to get this guy for some crazy reason.
And Rowena Drake is like playing it very like, oh, what a fun, weird story, Poirot. And then obviously they trot Michael in, and she becomes so enraged with jealousy at the fact that he's been with Miss Butler that she like lunges for her and essentially perjures herself. That's the word I was looking for. Admits fault.
Implicates herself.
There you go.
Rural perjure.
Perjure.
So they arrest these two ridiculous people, and all is now well.
Is it?
Or is it? Or
Well, I mean, it's better.
It is Weller,
they show, they show Poirot in the garden with the inspector and a guy digging up the garden, and they find Olga's body as promised. Then in our final little scene, Poirot, Ariadne Oliver, and Mrs. Butler are walking outside, and Mrs. Butler asks how Poirot knew that Michael Garfield was the father. And he says that it was because there were no pictures of Miranda's father. So it must have been someone like, and the way that she had originally talked about her father had been so lovely that it seemed unlikely that there wouldn't be any pictures. So she said that she wanted to make up a nice story about who her dad was for Miranda to think about, which is a nice idea, but sure didn't work. So Poirot says, as it turns out, I was right all along. Let's go light some candles for the dead.
And there's like a string version of the main theme, which is really quite lovely.
Mm-hmm. And then we
Just
get
ended on Pumpkinhead.
It ends on a pumpkin head. Yep. Bookends the thing. They start with a pumpkin head and they end with one.
And now us pumpkin heads are going to give our opinion about this episode.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
I can go first because I'm going to be real quick, I think.
Great.
It's it's out of 5 or out of 10. I ask this every week.
It's 5 for the TV,
5.
10 for the movie. But these are TV movies, and so it's understandable that you'd be like, but.
True.
Yeah, I'm going to give it like a solid 4.
Yeah.
Like, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really solid episode, but like not my favorite still. But like, I would return to this like around like Halloween, I think. Earlier, I think you mentioned, Melissa, about Joyce appropriating stories. And with that in mind, are we not the victims as people who are dealing with her cultural appropriation? Let us ponder that as an audience.
Ooh, a thing to think about.
Yeah. And now I am off to have a Granny Smythe apple.
Yes.
Are these things you were writing down? That's very good. I'll say this. I agree with Tyler. 4 out of 5, very solid. All the acting's good. The writing's quite good. The way the mystery plays out is consistent, if not suspenseful. I would say as well, though, this episode is hindered by us having seen Haunting in Venice, and so obviously this is an adaptation of the same work. I was remembering things as they were going along. However, I think it's a really great example of what adaptation can mean because these are so wildly different, both enjoyable, but wildly different. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. But I don't think it would be one I'm like desperate to see again, but I wouldn't turn off.
I think we're gonna go across the board, 4 out of 5 from me as well. Yeah. Really, the writing great. The directing really strong too. I really like the choices that were made in this. Strong performances. And yeah, a lot of the things that y'all have said before. And it wasn't hindered for me that we had seen Haunting in Venice because I didn't make the connection at all that it was the same thing. Except I thought it was weird about the bobbing for apples. So there you have it.
There you go.
Good up.
Yeah.
Good app. Good Omar Epps.
And I guess you should know that we have a Patreon, patreon.com/ADCpod. There are things there.
Some more Murder, She Wrote episodes.
Did the dog do it? Did the car do it? What's up with David? You find out on our Patreon.
Forgot about David.
How could you forget about David? It's like that is like
he occupies my mind not one whit. I had banished him from.
I started writing fanfic specifically around.
Oh, yes. That's that account that Instagram suggested me to follow that I didn't recognize.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's get our sleepy selves to bed if there's no more business.
I don't think there is. Patreon's good. There's episodes. It's good.
I now call this meeting to a close.
Sure.
Well, we can't vote. Tristan's already asleep. So with that,
okay,
we are adjourned.
Good night.
Honk shoe.
Did you say haunt you?
I said honk shoe.
Oh.
But...